Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And going into the upcoming Modern Warfare 2 season, one of the big questions has been, who is going to be the best player in the game on potentially the best team? Some say that right now it's going to be between FaZe and OpTic potentially for number one in terms of power rankings. And who is their best player going into the upcoming season? Cellium got the MVP last time round, but Dashy believes that Shotzzy was clearly the best player in the world last season, but doesn't necessarily get the credit that he deserves. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that one. Let's dive straight into things here. Crimsix is at it again here on stream. But I wanted to say this as well because some of you guys may have been following this or getting involved in this. The $100,000 CDLR, so CDL Resurgence, Fortunes Keep qualifiers. Like, I see them tweeting about this and I still don't really know what's going on. I'm guessing it's like a Warzone thing that anyone can enter. And then if you do well enough, then you can qualify to actually playing one of the tournaments. But I thought it was weird because the CDL came out with this last night in one of their kind of classic kind of, well, designs really here, where they've got something bad to tell you. And as they go on to say, the CDLR in-game open leaderboard has been updated to account for some scoring discrepancies from this past weekends. The issue has now been addressed and teams impacted by this update have been notified. We apologize for the inconvenience. And I think a lot of people saw this and were like, what are you even talking about? What's even the context for this? I'm sure the context is like available if you actually really look into it and try and figure out what's going on. But yeah, I don't really know like why the CDL, I guess it makes sense. The CDL are going to get involved in Warzone stuff. I know that Aches has been fearful for quite some time that the CDL at some point is just going to be the Warzone League. And yeah, every single year it seems like they take further steps towards us, even though this probably happened last year and this tournament was going on, but it just wasn't this update happening. So, but it's like, look, I know people are saying, well, I'm going to second CDL. Can you know, do something valuable, announce expansion or whatever, even though, of course, it's not their prerogative to make that happen. But instead, there's this stuff going on. I guess it's better than nothing happening. But yeah, still, I think people can still get involved in this, but there's drama, obviously, with the scoreboard and stuff. Classic CDL making it some sort of an issue out of nothing. This I thought was kind of funny as well here real quick, because Looty comes out with this. Just had to check the standings of the current Vanguard leaderboards, and it seems like Doug has been dethroned. So all the drama of the last few days has taken Doug now down to second in the ladder. He's actually 700 points behind Looty, right? So he's going to have to make that discrepancy up for sure. Like, yeah, so Doug number one on the leaderboards for a fair bit of time, but he's going to have to keep on going. So yeah, season 5 of ranked play and Doug's still going. Like, just unbelievable stuff. But Looty's managed to dethrone him, at least for now. And as he says, interesting, you may have won the battle, but the war isn't over, he says. And Doug's going to come back with a vengeance here, it seems, for ranked play going forwards. Now, a few days ago, we saw some odds for which players are the most likely, in theory, to be the best player in the game for the upcoming season, who are the MVP candidates really going forwards. And it's the like of, you know, of course, Cellium's going to be up there, Shotzzy, Dashy really in the conversation. And then, of course, the other FaZe guys, Simp and aBeZy for sure, are going to be in the conversation as well. And even others like Scrappy weren't too far away from the top of that list, right? And Kenny, of course, was up there as well after the back-to-back MVPs from the end of last season. Just wanted to say this because apparently Cellium has a lot more things that, you know, he actually found out from Vanguard. This is kind of remarkable. The first one as well, look at this, right? So, I mean, well, okay, the MC Mondays, as they say, there's a few things that he came up with right here. Some of them are here on Berlin, which I believe Scump has said is pretty much like the worst map he's ever played on for competitive. But look at this, right? So, like, Cellium has figured out a way that you can come up to this doorway here on what is this, Tuscan, and mount it or something. And the other guy can't even see you. So, like, he's not really mounting it, but, like, you basically can't get seen if you creep up to the door like that. I don't know how he figured that out. And this was, like, a massive thing here on Berlin as well, where if you look at certain parts of the map, there's, like, doors and windows and stuff that are effectively you can see through. Like, so if you look at it from this angle here, you look at the floor, this window doesn't render in, and this is a big issue on Berlin for the majority of the season, that players figured out that if you're looking at the doorway and the window, then the door appears and is there. But if you look away from the door at a certain angle, then it just doesn't render in because I guess the game doesn't want to focus on it. So you can actually see the same thing right here. You can see through the door to the B-bomb site if you look at the floor, and this I think was the one that many people pointed out, that I think it's maybe this walkway or this doorway or something, where if you look at a certain angle, you can actually you can effectively see through doors. Classic Cellium at finding stuff like this. But of course, you know, Shotzzy for a time this season was one of his key candidates for the MVP race of the season. I think for a large part of the season, Shotzzy was number one in many people's eyes. I'm pretty sure I had Shotzzy as number one in my kind of MVP candidate ladders for quite some time, probably up to even Major 3. Shotzzy was really in that conversation, and then after that, Cellium really came through and dominated, and the OpTic guys kind of fell off a bit, and Shotzzy individually wasn't quite at the same level. And then by the end of the season, it was really Cellium versus Dashy for the MVP, and Shotzzy wasn't really too much in the conversation. But Dashy believes that Shotzzy certainly should have been there, and he reckons that despite people, you know, talking trash trash on Shotzzy's name for a fair bit of the season, then actually he was the strongest player last year.
Dude, that's what I'm saying, bro. Like, you guys, like the best players, the best players that you guys think are the best players aren't even like the people, like, or at least the pros who think that are actually good.
Okay. I'm just gonna be a distraction. Just get one and TP out.
Okay. I'm sending like behind him. Yeah.
Let's fly.
Okay.
Like, the best player actually last year was Ant, but people spit on him because like he had a bad stats. You know what I mean? Like, bro, like that was by far the best player in the game.
So I think we saw this right in relatively early part of the season when Shotzzy was being considered by many, and understandably, to be, let's just say, the most impactful player in the game. His search and destroy especially was just superb last season. The fact that like his first blood rate was so, like his first blood percentage wasn't so good, but whenever he got a first blood, like his conversion into a round win must have just, like the stats on that must have just been immense, because if he got the first blood, he'd usually go on to get like 2 or 3 kills. It was pretty ridiculous, and his search numbers this season were fantastic, but also in the respawns, right? You guys remember some of the games he had on, for example, Berlin, where, you know, he was just doing some serious damage, and Shotzzy going even, creating all the space he does, like, is obviously really impactful to the team, and his numbers in all the modes at the start of the season were incredibly good. As the year progressed, though, it wasn't quite the case so much. The numbers fell off a bit. There was all this drama about online versus LAN when Shotzzy's numbers got significantly worse, and in fairness, you can expect numbers to get worse going to LAN than online, largely just because on LAN, you generally play better teams than you do online. This is Shotzzy's LAN only card for the entirety of 2022. You can see that especially Search and Destroy, that was really where he stood out this season, and that was where arguably OpTic had a lot of their success, was their Search and Destroy being better than it had been in the past. In fairness, the first few events came a lot down to their control dominance, and largely Dashy's play in that particular mode, but I do find it interesting how different players have different perceptions of which players are the dominant forces in the game, because obviously a lot of fans are going to look a fair bit at the numbers, and you're going to look at, you know, Cellium's numbers here in a second and think, okay, wow, this guy must be the MVP, but I think a lot of pro players realize that it's the SMGs generally that have the most impact, and Shotzzy at his peak is probably the most impactful of all of them, you could argue. Like, I think there's very few teams that would turn down Shotzzy. Of course, we believe that FaZe wanted to get Shotzzy from OpTic, and he either said no or something else happened when that whole situation was going on, and even Shotzzy, I believe, said himself on a flank or something at some point, like when he was really in prime form, they asked him, are you the best player in the game? And he said, maybe not, but I'm certainly the most impactful player in the game, which in Dashy's opinion is probably one and the same. Now, in fairness, I don't really think Shotzzy was getting that much like slander to him, apart from the whole LAN versus online thing as the year progressed. But as I said, there's other explanations for that. But in fairness, you know, the fact must remain that his stats were significantly worse on LAN than they were online. But at the start of the season, like, that wasn't really the case at all. You guys can see here, Major 1, Major 2, Major 3, Shotzzy's numbers were pretty ridiculous. This is really where, like, he was in the conversation for best player in the world, and I think #1 on a lot of people's MVP candidate ladders after winning Major 1, and then of course Major 2 has a 98 rating here. Of course, this is just, well, online plus lab at a 1.41 in search, average damage, you know, positive in both of the respawns as well, and then an 89 rating at Major 3, and then after that, things kind of fell off rather significantly. But of course, you can argue during that situation that the iLLeY thing happened, then ProLuke came in, and it did seem like when ProLuke came in, individually ProLuke was still doing pretty well, but it was kind of the SMGs that weren't quite firing Scump and Shotzzy as they were before ProLuke came in, and then even with iLLeY coming back, they didn't really seem to get that chemistry together again like they had before, and therefore by the time it came around to the end of the season, it really was Cellium versus Dashy for the MVP race, and yeah, even the fact that Dashy won an event, and there was all the drama about that, right, because OpTic had won, obviously FaZe hadn't won, but you know, Cellium, his numbers were a bit better, he was probably more impactful to the team's success on the whole. They'd made like all the grand finals, so it was a conversation to be had. In the end, Cellium gets given it. I mean, his hardpoint numbers are pretty ridiculous as well, but I think many would argue that in terms of best SMGs over the course of the year, Shotzzy is either right there, or you can give it to Pred potentially. I think at the end of the season, Pred was certainly the best SMG in the game, but for the first few events, Shotzzy arguably took the cake. So Dashy is saying like, look, I'm very happy, I'm sure Dashy is, to be staying with that roster because he gets the team with Shotzzy for at least one more season, but he's also saying that some of the hate that's gone Shotzzy's way is most certainly unfounded. And I think it was rather interesting just looking at this. I've seen this ages ago, and I forget exactly who made this, unfortunately, but I saw this on Reddit and had it saved for a moment kind of like this, and it seems to be pretty relevant relevant now, of course, because we believe at least what most of the teams are going to be, and that this individually put this together, put, of course, the All-Star, so you've got Simp, Hydra, Attach, Sib, and Shotzzy all in the All-Star category, but in terms of MVP candidate, it was, Cellium, Dashy, and Pred, right? And I'm sure that Dashy would see this and think, no, there's no way Shotzzy should be number one. But in terms of, the way the season progressed, and of course, Shotzi's performance at Major 4 and Champs and stuff wasn't quite up to par. I'm sure he believes that individually as well, but Dashy might be thinking, look, he's getting a lot of hate, even though it was really the iLLeY thing that threw off the team, and that's a point that Scump's made many times, that when iLLeY was finally back in the team, then the team couldn't quite get to where they were before. The level of Scump and Shotzzy individually, and even Dashy wasn't quite where it was before iLLeY went out the first time, so maybe without that whole drama, then, Shotzzy could easily still be in this top conversation. So interesting stuff. Just wanted to look through the rest of this, actually, because, obviously, I think this is a reasonable list. There's probably a few things, of course, you guys can disagree with, but best player on a major winner ability. Got the entire Thieves roster actually in here, a couple of the FaZe guys, even aBeZy's down here, Scump's here, of course, Slasher in the conversation. Steady, solid starters, actually, I thought was pretty interesting. Inconsistent, but elite or pop-off potential, with, of course, Cammy, I think, is understandable there. Huke as well probably fits this category pretty well. I quite like this one as well, actually. Stats don't match the impact, so Krim is in here, iLLeY as well. Vivid, Havoc, Kismet, Bance, Accuracy, and Mage Minnick, I thought that was pretty good. Good player down season, right? So yeah, Clay, Standy, Priest. Priest is an interesting one because he's had quite a few down seasons in a row, but I still believe he can kind of come back. And that, well, actually, the majority, or at least a large part of that LAG roster from last season, young and inconsistent, and some fringe pros here at the bottom of the screen. But yeah, I thought this was a pretty decent list on the whole. I quite like the categories that this individual created, but I thought it was interesting looking at this and just seeing that Shotzzy wasn't really in that number one MVP candidate conversation, despite the fact that Dashy, I'm sure, believes he should have been. So definitely intrigued to your thoughts and all that stuff in the comment section below. Just wanted to mention real quick here that Arcitys was playing some Cold War Chal. Seems to be kind of one of the go-to games in these few weeks just before Modern Warfare 2 does arrive. He's playing against, I think there was one that he was playing against Scrappy, actually, but this is a nice little 1 versus 2. I think the first guy he actually completely turns on right here for the 1 versus 2, and yeah, this guy gets absolutely schmongdingles. Kind of unfortunate for that guy, and he goes on to clutch out the 1 versus 2 as well at the end of the clip. But very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit on the like button, tell us YouTube God, this is a good video, and as like you should see it as well, and help grow the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you as always, take care, and I'll see you next time.
One's red car, one's top brown.
Time is running out.
He's telling you, statue. Oh, look at it's pinching, I think.
Oh,
bro. Oh my god.
Eliminate their last operator.
Is it? I think.
That was ASAT, that was ASAT. He just picked up bomb? He just picked up bomb.
Oh,
Oh my god.
Come on.